Today, Rod Hannifey is not only a truck driver, but he's also well known throughout the road transport industry as one of the country's leading road safety advocates, and has dedicated much of his spare time to promoting a safer environment for all road users, as well as improving conditions for drivers. Today, he operates the latest Kenworth K200, along with a lavish curtain-sider B-double set that depicts the aims of what's become known as the Truckright industry vehicle, which has four main aims: to improve roads by providing information back to road authorities, to improve road safety, to raise road transport industry awareness, and seek more and better rest areas. We caught up with Rod and asked him to tell us about the Truckright industry vehicle.
My name's Rod Hannifey. I'm a full-time truck driver, and I suppose for want of a better term I use a road transport and road safety advocate is what I do. I got involved 10 years ago, was on the road one Christmas, and of course everybody was bagging out the caravanners for doing the wrong thing. And at the time I thought, well, if no one teaches them how to share the road with us, how are they going to know? So I started off with a thing called the caravan survey, put that out through the caravan parks, got really good feedback out of that. If you've ever seen the back of a caravan with Channel 18 on the back, I started that. I wrote for Caravan magazine for 8 years about sharing the road with trucks, and it's just got me more and more involved into things. I've won a couple of awards. I've got the blue reflectors on the stone guard there, where we've got the informal parking bays. That took me 8 years to convince the RTA of that, and I still drive full time, but now I've got this truck and I hope to promote the industry and road safety.
Rod, can you explain how the blue reflectors and informal parking bays work?
Yep. We don't have enough rest areas in Australia. We haven't had, we still don't. And a bloke that knows a road really well, he knows round the next corner or past that dead tree there's somewhere safe to stop. If you don't know the road very well, if you haven't been on it before, and I've even had blokes say I was that damn tired that I knew the parking bay, I knew the bit of dirt was there somewhere, but by the time you see it, you're on it, it's too late, and you've only got to look on the highway with these big black skid marks where some bloke saw at the last minute at a spot he can pull up. And I started doing these highway audit trips. I had some RTA staff in the truck, and I'd come home. I've been driving B-doubles virtually all the time, and I'd done a trip to Sydney in a single, so a road I wasn't familiar with, coming home over the Blue Mountains. I had 33,000 litres of petrol on. I was tired, I shouldn't have been on the road, but I couldn't find somewhere safe to stop. You can't just pull up on the edge with that much fuel on and go to bed, and you can't just turn around and go back. So by the time I found somewhere, I thought there's got to be a better way to mark this. And when I had the RTA staff in the truck, I said, well, the guideposts are there, the bits of dirt are there for the blokes that know them. Why don't we find a way to mark them to help blokes when there's not enough rest areas? And look, I hope one day we don't need the damn things because we'll have enough rest area, but that day's a long way away. As you see on the stone guard, I've got 321. These are informal sites. It costs $1 million now to do a deceleration and an acceleration lane for a recognised parking bay, let alone go and put a set of table and chairs in or anything else. But a bloke that travels the road up and down every night, he knows every little space where he can pull up, and look, he might want to leak, he might want to check his load, he might need 15 minutes over the wheel because the next parking bay is an hour away, or he might have gone past one that was full, so then he's got nowhere to stop. So those little bits of dirt, they're so valuable to us. Blokes that have stock crates and fridge vans, they know they're not really welcome into a parking bay full of blokes who are asleep, so they go and use those sites, and a lot of them have decent shade. The ones that we've marked now, yes, the blue reflectors are very valuable to show you where it is at night, but even in the daytime they're a site that has shade, because you've only got to look in most of the rest areas that we have. There's no shade unless you get right out to the edge. And living in one of these things is hard enough without living in there and sweating your guts out as well.
So, Rod, have they implemented this system Australia-wide?
Yeah, got them in Queensland, but I've been fighting all the other states to get it done, and looks like we're going to go to green. Victoria give me a hard time, so we're going to have to go to green. And then I put out a thing called the Truckies Top 10 Tips. I did a survey through the company I worked for, Finnemore's at the time, and asked drivers what we needed to teach car drivers. Did it through a magazine and got good feedback and come up with the Truckies Top 10 Tips. And on these trailers I have a different tip on the back each month, and I'd love to see that on every highway and in every capital in Australia. And I think over time we actually change people's perception, because we do not teach young drivers to share the road with trucks. We teach them how to pass a test, we let them loose on the highway, and they make a mistake because they don't know any better. They die, we get the blame, And people of course don't realise that the truckie's going to see that in his nightmares for the rest of his life. When I first got involved in this, I've had a number of discussions with people, and I said the worst possible thing that can happen is that I waste my time, waste my breath, that nobody listens. The best thing that can happen is that one person reads the top 10 tips on the back, that I get one bit of road fixed, because I ring the road authorities and they all hate hearing from me. I get one person who gets to use one of those informal parking bays, or I get a parking bay designed better. Because to be fair, they go out and they say, well, build a parking bay, they don't have to live in it, they don't have to sleep in it night after night. So if I can get one of those things done that prevents a crash or saves a life, from my point of view, it's worth it just for that, and everything after that's a bonus.
Can you explain how and why Rod Pilon and yourself became involved in the project?
Obviously this truck and these trailers, they belong to Rod Pilon. I was with one of our largest national transport companies who I couldn't get support from, in my point of view, and I left after 28 years service there, and it was very frustrating. I came to Rod and said that this is what I wanted to do. Look, incredibly, he and Ken Wilkie, who supplied the first Truckright industry vehicle that I had, they've stood up and supported what I do. It is a cost to them, it has been. Obviously I try and work it in with things, I try and coordinate trips or events that work in where possible, but there are times when the trucks come off the road to allow me to do something. Rod's bought this new vehicle specifically for me, and I've committed to do this for the next 4 years. We're going ahead with new curtains to put something out there that's valuable. And honestly, mate, I'd love to see one of these sorts of vehicles on every highway. If every company did something like it, and one truck is not going to change the world, but if we had a dozen of them on the highway, people read it, they see it, they have a different understanding of our industry and what it does. We have that responsibility I mentioned to treat people properly, and you've only got to look at the kids. Years ago, what did they do? They all stood on the side of the road and they went like this, wanting you to blow the air horn. We don't have that now. We are having a problem getting people into our industry because of the laws and the penalties, and the older blokes are being driven out because of that technology. They're very good drivers, they're not necessarily road scholars, but the technology is getting to the point with these electronic work diaries where we can be monitored to every second of every day and every metre we travel. And there is no one else in the Australian workforce that is monitored to that level of scrutiny.
Can you tell us how you find your Kenworth truck?
Look, Kenworth has a very special place in our Australian transport industry. I suppose if you go to the past, you'd look at things like the 1418 and the B model, and they were those very early days that made a lot of people money. Now you look at Kenworths, they have a very strong dominance in the heavy end of the market. They're a status symbol to a lot of people. The bug on the front means that it's a Kenworth, and I'm a truck driver, and that's what it's all about. This new truck here, the K200, is an evolution. Some say it's been a long time coming. They certainly had to come forward, and this truck has all the electronic stability control and the safety features package that Kenworth are now promoting. There is changes not only in technology, the way that we are monitored, but how the truck can help you. Some people say that we're putting too many car drivers into trucks now. This truck has a fully automatic or auto over manual transmission, and in some ways we then have to do more with our training for drivers, so that not just because they can put into gear and drive off they can have a job, but we've got to make sure they're trained to load, to get the vehicle from A to B safely. And the way the trucks are moving forward, there is advantages to us. Yes, they're a bit more comfortable. Not like the old days where you had the Armstrong steering and the air conditioning meant you wound the window down. We've made some enormous moves forward, but we have a lot more traffic on the road. My concentration level in watching all of those cars and dealing with them and driving for them means that the more time I can concentrate on that, the better. So the automatic means that it's one less thing I've got to worry about. This has active cruise control, so I can set the cruise control. If I catch up to a vehicle because they've slowed down and I haven't noticed, it will inform me. I've got EBS brakes. So all of those things are meant to make us safer. They are contributing to the safety on the road. But of course, in the end, it all comes down to the driver. And if the driver's happy in the truck that he's driving and he feels confident, and he's happy that he's been given a good vehicle to do the job, well, I believe he's going to do that job even better.
Rod, can you tell us about some of the challenges that you have to deal with merely travelling between the states?
So in the new technology, we've got GPS tracking, we've got all of these things on this truck. This was the first truck, well, the white one before this was the first truck anywhere in the world that had the capacity to read the impact of the road into the truck. Now I ring road authorities on a regular basis and I say there's a bad bump, and they say, well, who are you? I say, I'm a truck driver involved in road safety. If only one driver rings, that's not enough. If 5 ring, suddenly there's a problem. If 10 ring, they're out there chasing it. But behind that, we've got all the rules and regulations. We are now so close to a national heavy vehicle regulator, and let's hope that it does its job properly. But now, at the moment, I've got 3 folders there that weigh about 10 or 15 kilo. I've got permits for every state in Australia, and that's it. You've got to have one for each of those states for over height, for over width, for your road train regs, for your road, for B-double regs, for compliance, for all of the things that you've got to do, and you've got to carry that in a truck, and then you've got to be able to produce it and find it, and yeah, it's just another thing that's ridiculous, and we hope that this national regulator will solve some more of those problems.
Rod, can you tell us how you measure the bumps?
The road impacts into the truck, up until now, we couldn't prove that. We could ring the authority and say there's a bump, and they'd say, yeah, go out in the car, no problem. What happened when we got the road-friendly suspensions, you are required every 12 months to confirm that your suspension is road-friendly. Now, the only way to do that is to pull all your shock absorbers off, to test them on a bench, and put them back on. Very labour-intensive. The people in Brisbane have a system which they call INSCOM, and when they started looking at these road-friendly suspensions, they thought, well, there's got to be a better way to prove that compliance. And to do that, they found a way they could measure the deflection of the airbags in running over a specific item. Having done that, they thought, well, geez, if we can measure something where we've run over what we know, why can't we measure when we run over something that we don't know and record that? And that first truck was the first truck in the world had it. It was all manual because I knew where the bumps were. So what I did, I'd go along, I'd know the bump was coming up, I'd press a button, we record that data. It records a G-force impact into the truck. It has a GPS locator on it, and that's the problem with the road authorities. You ring up and say, there's a really bad bump 10k past that dead tree on the other side of Whoop Whoop. And they say, oh, we can't find it. And there's one at Wagga I still can't get them to find it. I hit it every night. But if I can now go to them and say, here is the bump, here is the location, here is the impact. Now, there was a bump at Moree, was a 2G impact into the truck. We're allowed 6 tonne on the steer, 3 tonne per steer tyre. At a 2G impact, that's 6 tonne per steer tyre impact. Now, that took me 6 months of complaining to get that bump fixed.
Rod, can you run through the spec of your new K200 Kenworth?
Yeah, this is the new K200. It's spec'd with a ISX Cummins engine rated at 600 horsepower, Euro 5, as I say. You have a look at the exhaust, it's clean and will be till the day it dies. It's set up with a Eaton Ultra Shift 2 automatic transmission, again to take the wear and tear off the driveline. Look, not every drive is perfect, and every gear you miss is a little bit more wear on the driveline, so the auto is meant to improve that. The vehicle's set up with an auto greaser. It has central tyre inflation. It has a whole range of technologies. It has onboard scales. We've got Nava lighting on the front, good to see overnight. It's got the 3M reflective tape for conspicuity, so it can be seen in the dark. I've added my own mud flaps. I've got people who have contributed those. In the cabin, we've got a full gauge set, and we've got other technologies going into the truck, reading the road, tyre pressure monitoring, GPS mapping, all of those sorts of things. And look, the average person, when they get in the truck, they think, geez, this is nearly like an aeroplane, and some of the technologies there. And look, I do have a view that airline pilots deserve all the money they get, but they've got the hostie there to get the coffee, and they've got the co-pilot when they get a bit tired. They've got beautifully smooth, concrete, perfect runways, and they don't have to get out in the mud and change the tyres. So yeah, we deserve a little bit more respect for the job than we get. And this is an attempt to put the industry and what we do in front of people to get them to understand that.
And that's where we have to leave Rod and his impressive Truckright industry vehicle for the time being.